It's no secret, but I'm a fairly big fan of Suda51 and the oddball titles he creates. Suda is known as the punk rock director of video games, and has often been compared to the likes of auteur film directors like Quentin Tarantino, just without the foot fetish. His over-the-top, goofy, violent video games have captured the imaginations of a few weirdos across the world like myself. If you're familiar with any of Suda's works, it's likely the No More Heroes series. But that's not what made him known outside of the land of the rising sun. It's a game that I hear quite a few people mention, but no one really talks about in great detail. So that's what I'm here to do today. We're going to talk about the Suda51 classic title, the stylish, the violent, the downright absurd, Killer7. Here's a short history lesson for you normies and sinners who don't know anything about Goichi Suda or haven't seen my other video on Suda51. Goichi Suda, or best known by the moniker Suda51, is a game director, writer, producer, designer who has made some interesting titles, to say the least. His personal design ethos, as well as his studio's, is to create games infused with the spirit of punk. He has been directing games since the 90s, starting with Fire Pro Wrestling 3. He later started his own studio, Grasshopper Manufacture, where he started writing and directing primarily visual novels. The studio also would make a few anime licensed games, a weird little horror game called Michigan Report from Hell, and most of the games he produced really didn't come to the West, and the ones that didn't have as much of that iconic Suda flair that we're used to today. Until, in 2002, Capcom would announce what we now know as the Capcom 5. 5 games for Nintendo's Purple Lunchbox that would hopefully boost the perception of the GameCube as a console for real gamers. The Capcom 5 included PN03, a game I don't think anyone has ever played, Beautiful Joe, a Hideki Kamiya joint, a little-known title by the name of Resident Evil 4, and most importantly, the subject of today's video, Killer7. Killer7 is directed by the man, the myth, the legend himself, Suda51. The story was written by Suda and the director of Resident Evils 1 and 4, Shinji Mikami. The two would join forces again years later on the game Shadows of the Damned.
Now that is a big boner.
Mikami did have some input over the gameplay of Killer7. Suda and Mikami would have nearly monthly meetings, where Mikami would say what he did and did not like of the current build of the game. This game was created to boost the profile of the GameCube, so well, did it achieve that? No, not really. The game kind of flopped. Killer7 sold nearly 300,000 copies between the PS2 and GameCube combined, and the game released in 2005 after Capcom gave up on the whole GameCube exclusivity with the Capcom 5. And they want you to forget about the Capcom 5, but I'll never forget or forgive. But what Killer7 did accomplish was create a strong cult following for this oddball director and put him into the hearts and minds of gamers outside of Japan. Now let's move on to the game itself. The game is part first-person rail shooter, part adventure puzzle game with a small dash of RPG elements. The story follows the Smith Syndicate, a single assassin with 8 separate personalities, all with their own body, as they attempt to thwart a terrorist attack attempting to destroy America itself. The 7 personalities that you play as in each mission are called the Killer7. And before really digging into the story, I want to talk about the gameplay and my major criticisms of the game, because I don't want to spoil anything too soon, and sometimes it's better to start with the bad and end with the good. So in other words, we're starting with the veggies and gonna finish with the dessert. Killer7 plays like nothing I've ever played before. Smith moves along a preset track, able to move forward by pressing the X button on a PlayStation controller. When you get to a door or a branching section of a path, you get to select which direction you want to go. To turn around, you press the circle button, and to ready your weapon, you press the right trigger, and then press X to fire. All the enemies are invisible until you scan them. You press the right trigger to ready your weapon, then the left trigger to scan the room. And once you scan them, they'll be fully visible, and depending on the difficulty level, you'll see a glowing yellow weak spot. This is definitely a unique control scheme to say the least, and it honestly took some getting used to. It's not bad, it's just weird. Like I said earlier, it's like nothing I've ever played before, and as a real gamer, that means something. Combat has you shooting creatures called Heaven Smiles, these invisible monsters that explode when they make contact with you. When you enter a room, you can hear them laugh, and that's when you know to ready your weapon and scan the room. Like I said before, depending on the difficulty level, they'll have a glowing yellow weak spot that just screams "shoot me." If you kill them by shooting the weak spot, they'll explode into blood that the player can absorb, which brings me to the healing and upgrade mechanics. There are two types of blood, thin blood and thick blood. Thick blood can be taken to the Harmon's rooms and converted into vials at the TV. These vials can be used to upgrade each of Smith's personalities. The thin blood is a consumable item that you use to activate a personality's special ability, like Dan or Coyote's charge shot or Kevin's invisibility. Or the thin blood can be used as a healing item, filling up to 20 charges worth. One charge filling up a bit of health, which is shown as the eyeball in the top corner of the screen. How close the eye is to closing is how close you are to death. Speaking of death, if a single personality dies in a level, their corpse is left more or less where they died, with a police chalk outline and a bloodied paper bag. Then you're sent back to the last Harmon room you entered, and forced to select another personality to play as. The personality that died is now unplayable. The only way to revive them is by using the personality of Garcian Smith. You run over to the corpse as Garcian, almost like a corpse run in one of those Dark Souls games these kids are all about these days. Just the big difference is, it's a playable character this time, not just experience points. Garcian will retrieve the remains, and you'll have to button mash the X button to revive them, and then the personality will be playable once again. The levels have multiple paths that branch out and can loop back into each other, almost like the aforementioned Dark Souls. Man, this is really the Dark Souls of rail shooters when you think about it. The levels have a lot of backtracking and environmental puzzles. A bulk of the puzzles are solved with these elemental rings that you find in several levels. Fire, water, wind, and time, and even a stamina and power ring. Most of these rings are used for puzzles, minus the power and stamina rings, which are just straight up health or damage buffs. The rings stay with you from level to level, so you don't have to worry about any unnecessary scavenger hunts in the level. Like I mentioned earlier, all the Smith personalities have a special ability that can either help with puzzles or combat, like Kaide's ability to dispel illusions, Kevin's ability to become invisible and slip past security systems, etc. The puzzles never being too difficult once you get your bearing with all the mechanics. I feel like it helps break up the combat quite a bit, making the game more than a shooting gallery. Now that I've covered the basics of how Killer7 plays, let me get into my complaints of the game. This game doesn't really tell you about most of its mechanics straight up, beyond how to move and shoot. If you want to learn things like how to heal yourself, how to revive a dead personality, what characters' abilities are, and other tutorials that would be really helpful when you play, you have to go to the Harmon's room and run to the back of the room to talk to the Iwazaru, the man in the pink gimp suit, so he can give you a long-winded tutorial on very important mechanics that you should just probably get while you're playing the game. I mean, I'm not a game designer, but I think keeping major mechanics like healing, or the fact that you can swap personalities on the fly, behind a somewhat optional tutorial man inside of the checkpoint rooms might not be the best design. He has multiple pages of tutorials to go through, which I honestly barely touched. I think a lot of the more important mechanics should be taught through gameplay and maybe tutorials that come up as you play, instead of, if you think you need it, go find the man in the pink gimp suit in the save room. Some of those mechanics are extremely important, like the ability to switch personalities on the fly. Like if you don't learn that by mission 3, you're gonna be stuck forever. I also feel like the difficulty curve of the game is kinda backwards. In my experience, I felt the beginning of the game was far harder than the back half of the game. This is partly compounded by the lack of tutorializing that I mentioned, but I feel like in the first couple missions, I was barely making it out of most combat encounters alive. If a smile hits you, you get stun locked for a couple seconds, which if you're getting swarmed by a handful, you're immediately dead. But the game does get easier as you go, I think, even as the game throws new enemy types at you, and with some areas with infinite respawning enemies, the game still felt easier. It could be the fact that you probably have leveled up most of the personalities a decent amount by this point, which makes the combat encounters a whole lot easier. But I had so many problems with that introductory level that I nearly scrapped this video entirely. But by the end of the third mission, I did fall in love with this oddball experience. Phew. Now that I got all those complaints out of the way, Now let's get to the real draw of Killer7, the art and story of this weird world that Suda has crafted. The game has a vibrant, cel-shaded look, with vibrant colors and thick shadows, creating a beautiful and stark contrast. The color choices in the game also feel pretty inspired, and somewhat reminds me of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. The thick black outlines on a lot of the characters kinda come off as pop art. The monster designs are also pretty cool. The basic enemy is, well, kinda basic, a humanoid man that walks towards you and explodes, but some of the later enemies have some odd designs that I can't help but love, just like the spawner enemy that looks downright horrifying. And this beautiful visual style really won't be seen again, at least until 2013, with Grasshopper's nearly forgotten hack and slash title, Killer is Dead. Killer7 may be a near 20-year-old game, but with art direction this good, it stands head and shoulders above even games releasing today, at least visually. Now that I'm done with the visuals, now might be a good time to introduce you to the personalities of the titular Killer7. So spoiler warnings for character details. Let's start with the face of the Smith Syndicate, Garcian Smith. Tall, dark, and handsome. He seems to be the dominant, or at least the most prominent personality. He's the Smith you'll see in most of the cutscenes. Garcian wields a small, silenced pistol, and is said to be able to spot a smile from a great distance. His role in gameplay is more of a medic. Garcian is a self-proclaimed cleaner, and if another Smith falls in battle, Garcian is the one that comes in and cleans up the mess. Garcian is the one that brings all the characters back to life if they fall in battle. Next, let's move to Dan. Dan, tall, handsome, has a nice suit to boot. Dan is often called the Hellion, or the demon of the crew, for his nearly demonic behavior in battle. Dan brandishes a .357 revolver, and his special ability, Collateral Shot, creates a giant Dragon Ball type energy blast that deals massive damage when it lands. Now we get the girl of the group, Kaede Smith, or best known as Barefoot Kaede. Wait, barefoot? Like Quentin Tarantulino, just without the foot fetish. Fuck. Suda, I trusted you. Kaede wears a blood-stained dress, and you might have guessed, no shoes. That should make you degenerate foot freaks really happy. She uses a Colt 45 Silver Slide with a high-powered scope, making her the sniper of the group. Her special ability is to dispel illusions by summoning a legally distinct JoJo stand, a remnant part of the Smith psyche called Mizaru. Kaede summons her by using a small blood sacrifice. Also, her gun makes an appearance in the little talked about game Resident Evil 4 as the Killer7. Next up is Coyote Smith, the master thief of the group. Wait a minute, why did you make the Latin man a thief, Suda? Seems a bit sus if you ask me.
You sussy baka!
Coyote can jump extreme heights and climb up to places that no one else in the group can reach. Coyote can pick nearly every lock in the game, making him
the master of unlocking,
just like the best Resident Evil waifu, Jill Valentine. He wields a custom Enfield revolver that fires custom rounds. These modifications to his gun apparently breaking many international laws. Now it's time to meet Kevin Smith. Yeah, not that one. This one. Kevin doesn't really talk much. Or at all. It's said he doesn't speak because his voice can summon the gods. He can turn invisible to pass through enemy security systems with ease. He uses throwing knives to dispatch his enemies. Also, fun fact, Kevin is gay. He killed the very man he loved before joining the Smith Syndicate. Which is surprising, because all the gay men I know don't know how to shut the fuck up. Say hello to Con Smith, a 14-year-old hooligan, foul-mouthed, and brash. He's a speedy little fucker too. His special ability giving him an extra speed boost when you need it, which is never really necessary in the game. His small size lets you squeeze into places that the other Smiths could never access. He's also the member of the group that has super hearing. I don't see how his giant headphones don't dampen his sonar-like hearing at all. Khan's weapon of choice are twin auto pistols, which he reloads with his feet extremely efficiently. I don't know whether I should be horrified or impressed. Finally bringing us to my personal favorite personality. Masked Smith, a lucha libre who's built like a shit brick house. A massive man with extreme strength and durability. Mask wields twin grenade launchers, able to kill most monsters in a single shot, the downside of which means you rarely gain blood by killing enemies with Mask. Mask's superhuman strength can clear any obstacle in Smith's way. He also gets a couple costume changes throughout the game, as well as a power-up. Now, let's move to the head of the Smith Syndicate, Harmon Smith. He is an old, wheelchair-bound man that wields a Barrett 50 cal rifle strapped to the back of his wheelchair. He seems to be the puppet master of the Smith Syndicate. He often speaks cryptically, never learning the man's true intentions. When you find Harmon in Garcian's trailer, he seems like he's an invalid old man, but other times when you see Harmon, he seems to be a terrifying mastermind. Now, let's cover a few of the important non-Smith characters. Vincel Dil Borth VI Ivazarikov, or simply known as Iwazaru, is a remnant of Harmon's psyche. He's pretty hard to miss with his bright pink gimp suit. He gives you little pieces of the plot throughout the game, as well as dropping hints for many of the puzzles. He can be found dotted throughout every level, as well as most Harmon's rooms, where he can give you long-winded tutorials. Travis Bell. He was once a target of the Smith Syndicate. He was killed in the summer of 1969. Another remnant psyche Harmon has assimilated. Travis can be seen hanging around every level, giving the player plot-relevant information as well as hints. Travis claims to not care one way or the other about the Smiths, even though he gives you a lot of plot-relevant information throughout the game. Susie Summers is another remnant psyche that appears as a severed head. Susie is the one that gives Smith the rings that they use to complete their levels. While Susie was alive, she had a rough life of mental illness and abuse until meeting her end at the hand of Smith, then being assimilated into Harmon's psyche. Samantha Sibden is Harmon's caretaker. She can be seen in a maid outfit in some Harmon's rooms where she can save your progress in the game. But while you see her in Garcian's trailer, she can be seen abusing Harmon in his near comatose state. But when Harmon is mentally present, she is an attentive steward to the Syndicate. Now that we got through the bulk of the important reoccurring characters, I can finally talk about the plot of the game. Final and big spoiler warning for the entirety of Killer7 from here on out. We're gonna go level by level, discussing the happenings and plot of each level. But before I start, I do wholeheartedly recommend Killer7. So I recommend pausing the video, going onto Steam and getting that copy since it's the most accessible version of the game, playing it, and come back. But if you don't care about spoilers, I won't stop you from watching. I need to keep that watch time up, baby! The game opens on some cold, empty streets. We see a pass-off of information between a government agent, Christopher Mills, and a tall, dark, handsome gentleman in a stunning white suit. That man is Garcian Smith. And the pass-off was details on the Smiths' next job. They need to infiltrate the Celtic building in Seattle, Washington, and take out 14 Heaven Smiles there. Once entering the building, Garcian is caught on the security cameras. And once caught on these cameras, his personality shifts to that of the Hellion, Dan Smith. Dan continues into the building, and encounters a man with a hoodie. This man giving Dan a warning about the dangers that await him. And then that man was a smile all along. Now the game truly starts. You run through the level, you meet Travis, Iwazaru, Susie, and a character I forgot to mention, Yoon Han. Yoon being yet another psyche assimilated into Harmon. And his role is just a hint giver. He gives you hints on puzzles, and if you're really stuck, you can shoot the mask he's holding so he can take on his separate personality, becoming True Mask, and just giving you the answer to the puzzle. So Smith shoots and puzzles his way through the Celtic building, until you reach the top floor, where the personality of Harmon takes over, and meets an angel. Harmon and the angel have a bit of a back and forth, where the angel bemoans Smith for killing her children, which leads into battle. The angel being the first boss fight of the game, and she was pretty easy to beat. Dan or Kaide is the preferred personality for this fight. You run behind her and shoot the big red weak spots. After defeating the angel, Smith continues further into the building, entering a large room where another angel can be found standing before him. As Harmon, you take aim and fire at the angel. After a couple of shots, you should notice that none of them are taking effect, until you notice that it seems like there's someone standing behind her. You take aim and fire at this strange figure behind the angel. The figure that is revealed seems familiar to Harmon, the figure being Kun Lan. Using the angel as a sort of avatar, Kun Lan is exposed as the source of the Heaven Smiles. Harmon and Kun Lan talk as if they've known each other for ages, rivals, and possibly even friends at one point long ago. Kun Lan is also the wielder of the God Hand, possibly related to the Shinji Mikami game of the same title, but I wouldn't know, I've never played it. I mean, IGN gave it a 3 It can't be a good game, right? It seems like Harmon and Kun-lan have been playing a game of cat and mouse for God knows how long, but Lan admits that Harmon always wins in the end. Harmon grabs his rifle and fires one last shot at Lan. Kun-lan catches the 50 caliber round with his god hand and flies away, landing on the Space Needle, and gives a monologue on how the world is getting so much smaller that one will be able to control it in the palm of their hands, giving one last laugh. The day when laughter disappears from this world draws near, concluding Target 0, Angel. Next up, we start Target 01, Sunset. This mission starts out with an animated cutscene setting up the world of Killer7 itself. The year is 1998. World peace has been achieved. The major world powers formed anti-terrorist peacekeeping organizations, as well as consolidating all news media, limiting any ideas that might inspire terrorism in the future. The study and use of nuclear weapons is now banned, and all nuclear weapons are placed on Gibsoft Island until being launched into the upper atmosphere, where they're all destroyed, eliminating all nukes on Earth. Not gonna go into how that would probably create an EMP that would fry every electronic on Earth. That grand display is now known as the Missile Show, and it became a symbol of world peace. But 2003 saw a rise in terrorist attacks caused by a group called Smiling Faces. Their first target was a UN meeting and focused strikes on world leaders. These attacks carried out by these vicious, invisible monsters who explode on contact, and there seemed to be no defense against them, with the exception of the Killer7, who seemed to be the only people who could stop these monsters in their tracks. Fast forward to today, you see Garcian eating a hot meal while ignoring yet another political call. They leave a voice message about how the Republic Party needs your vote and how much your vote really matters, which Garcian immediately laughs off.
If you haven't, please let the Republic Party make the most of your precious vote. Thank you and have a nice day.
Precious vote? Yeah, right.
As you can see with the last two cutscenes, there are zero politics in this game. Nope, not at all. No message of denuclearization, media censorship, how little your vote really matters. Nope, no politics at all here. Just like video games should be. Anyway, back to Garcian. He checks in on Harmon to see him getting abused by Samantha in a near catatonic state. But by checking the television, you have a short meeting with Harmon, as you see a completely different Samantha attentive to Harmon. Harmon tells Garcian that an old friend of his is attempting to overthrow a country. Which brings us to a US military control room. You see military personnel scrambling all around, as hundreds of missiles fly towards Japan. The generals talk about how they can't intercept those missiles until they get the president's okay. Cut back to Garcian meeting with Mills for his next job. A job that all political parties are funding. To take down a man by the name of Toru Fukushima, a middleman between the Japanese UN reps and the US government. Your job is to take down Toru Fukushima at his sushi restaurant in Washington, D.C. By doing this, you are avoiding war between the US and Japan. Once you arrive at the restaurant, you find that it is infested by a bunch of Heaven's Smiles. The Smiles either killing or converting the restaurant staff. As you make your way through the restaurant, Mask has a run-in with the restaurant chef, which is honestly one of my favorite scenes of the game. I'll just let it play out for you.
What's in your right hand, Chico?
Please don't. This is just a...
Put your arms down!
No, it's not like that. This gun is a...
Don't move, amigo!
Please, don't shoot!
Stay still!
Ah!
What were you doing here?
Cleaning up. Our head chef always tells us that an ideal kitchen is a kitchen clean enough that you can lick the floor. Anyway, it's the least that I can do for them.
The others? The chef? The waiters? Where are they?
Those guys with the strange smiles. You saw them?
It's dangerous, Aki. Get out of here.
Awesome.
You eventually meet Mr. Fukushima himself, as well as his assistant, Julia Kisugi. Toru and Harmon have a nice cup of tea while discussing the Yakumo Party Policy, a document that Fukushima believes is the best bargaining chip to ensure Japan's safety. But mid-conversation, Toru's lovely assistant Julia decides to do some interior decorating with her boss's brains, shooting Toru during the meeting, and then putting her sights on Harmon, demanding that the Yakumo Party Policy should be handed over to her. She escapes the room and you chase after her, leading to the next boss fight of the game. The boss fight is rather simple. You shoot at Julia, Julia shoots at you. Whoever gets the most hits by the end of the time limit wins the fight. But here's when the game pulls what I call as a professional gamer a dick move. By sending you in with Mask, but with Mask's low rate of fire with his grenade launchers, you're likely to lose this round. You need to switch to Khan before entering, or just take the L and come back with Khan for round 2. You kill Julia and leave the restaurant, concluding Target 1, Part 1. Part 2 opens up with a meeting between Garcian and a man named Hiro Kasai. Hiro is working as a go-between for Mills and Smith, giving Garcian a job to kill the man, Jean de Paul, the unassuming chef from Restaurant Fukushima. De Paul, a spy that needs to be taken out. The UN's International Ethics Committee hopes that taking down De Paul will disrupt US-Japan talks and will ensure Japan's safety for the near future. Then we cut to a conference room with 3 politicians discussing how they missed out on the fireworks. The youngest of the politicians shows obvious displeasure with the older 2, but the older men slide a revolver over to the man and provoking him to shoot, essentially calling him a little bitch the entire time, and how they killed their superiors to get where they're at. The man, finally listening to his elders, opens fire on the 2, blowing their faces off like Pete Davidson in the start of the Suicide Squad movie, then finally turning the gun on himself until Kunlan appears. The elder gents sit back up, their heads looking like how mine feels after a night of chugging Four Loko. Even in this state, these 2 decide to shit on the younger generation, just like the boomers they are. Kunlan grabs the younger politician with his god hand, and it seems to affect him in such a way. He leaves a changed man. Now a man possibly possessed, or just simply with a new goal in mind. The older 2 citing this conversation as a success. And now, the mission really starts. You enter the Kaku building in search of De Paul. The building filled with Resident Evil style puzzles. Eventually, you make it to the basement, where you finally have your run-in with De Paul. Mask is the one to meet De Paul, just like in that restaurant kitchen. The 2 have a little chat. Mask is a little saddened that his advice to Jean to run away from all this fell on deaf ears. This fight is more of a puzzle than anything else. You can't shoot directly at De Paul. You shoot out the structure above him, the debris falling and killing De Paul. De Paul was guarding a meeting between US and Japanese representatives further down the basement. The meeting took place in a smoky room. 4 men playing mahjong. 2 men, US reps, the other 2 Japanese. The men discussing the future of Japan, and how Japan is on the verge of total destruction. The game concludes, and both sides are caught cheating. An old-fashioned Mexican standoff ensues. And you can say those peace talks didn't end so peacefully. Haha. But after a little chat with Travis, it seems like this all went down according to Keikaku. Now Smith makes their way up to the roof of the building, where you find the UN party headquarters, as well as those 2 older gentlemen who had their faces rearranged with that bullet. The 2 talking like they're Japan's last fighting chance for survival. They engage Smith to a fight to the death. Kaede is the best choice for this fight. She can snipe the 2 from the opposite side of the room. To take out the first one, you shoot the politician's tie, and as all good homies do, the other one will grow to fix it for him. And while he's going for the homie assist, you take a shot at his exposed brain. Once you drop that one, the remaining politician becomes more aggressive. You can either dodge or shoot out the projectiles mid-air and wait for your opening. He'll go to scratch his head, exposing his brain, and that's when you strike. Once you finish those 2 off, Garcian has his post-job meeting with Mills. The 2 meet on the bridge as they watch missiles fly over the sky and lament the imminent destruction of Japan. Laughter is the countdown of devastation. This concludes Target 1, Sunset. Target 2, Cloudman, starts with a TV broadcast by the one, the only, Andre Almeida, as he proclaims himself a prophet, and claims a catastrophe will strike this Stacy concert. And lo and behold, he was correct. Followed by a direct call out to Garcian and the Smith Syndicate to come and take him and his cult on. Garcian has a little chat with Harmon, well, after another disgusting display of elder abuse, this time of a different variety. Once you speak with Harmon, he tells you that he feels a disturbance in the south, and this time it wasn't his depends. He asks Garcian if he thinks this man is some sort of revolutionary, and Garcian tells him he's not a man of that caliber. So Harmon tells Garcian to take care of this Almeida for him. He'll be too busy with his dear Samantha. What a gross old man. The Smiths head down to Texas to hunt down Almeida and his cult. One thing I need to bring up for this chapter are these really nice animated cutscenes. There are a handful of anime cutscenes throughout the game, but I feel like right now would be the best time to talk about it. All the animated cutscenes were made by Studio Zebek. You may not be familiar with the name, but you might be familiar of one of the anime series they've produced. Some of the highlights are Love Hina, To Love Ru, Pokemon Origins, and the most important anime ever created, Keijo.
And I have access to all their butt techniques. Gain a booty lawn!
But sadly, Zebek is no longer with us. It got sold to Sunrise in 2018, and is likely working in the Gundam mines toiling away on some new Gundam spin-off, or even worse, yet another Love Live series. The cutscenes show the locals, as well as them discussing their feelings on Almeida's takeover of the town, turning it into Almeida City, making this his base of operations for his cult and his corporation, First Life. And a lot of the citizens there are not very pleased about Almeida's takeover. On your way into the city, Iwazawa tells you about his deep fear of afros, and that someone else will be taking over as your guide into the city. Remnant psyches of Almeida's cult members will guide you through the city, just as Iwazawa would. And yes, all the cult members are also sporting beautiful afros as well. While making your way through the town, you learn a lot about Almeida's past, like how he started off as a lowly postal worker and somehow climbed his way up to the CEO position of First Life, the world's largest distribution company, which that corporation is bankrolling the takeover of the town. After shooting and puzzling your way through the town, you reach a beautiful canyon landscape, which you need to traverse to get to the First Life headquarters. And might I add, that canyon looks stunning. I think the entire level looks better than everything before it. The canyon's bright, vibrant sky, everything just looked like a postcard. And the city gave me Mario vibes with its color scheme. Anyway, when you enter First Life HQ's front door, you might notice that something might be a bit off. Namely, that once you walk in, there is no building. What stood before you was just a giant cardboard cutout, a facade. The only thing behind this facade, a lone trailer, where Almeida sits. You enter the trailer and finally encounter Almeida himself. He tells you all about how his company is just a shell, this non-existent entity that just ran a lot of commercials to give the illusion of it being this big, powerful, prosperous entity. Or as he puts it,
it doesn't exist, no sir. It just runs commercials. You see, people judge books by the covers.
Then he grabs one cult member for one final job, testing the metal of this cult member's soul. As Almeida puts it, he's been fighting death his whole life, testing the limits of what his body can do, but just the thought of becoming a heaven smile is too much for his soul, begging Smith to put an end to him on his own terms. But before Smith gets the chance to finish the job, none other than the US military decides to step in. I mean, of course, who else other than the US military would just march in and fuck everything up without a second thought? This goes as poorly as you might expect. Now you need to put Almeida out of his misery. This boss fight itself isn't too difficult. You run through the ambulance maze and try to get behind Almeida the best you can. His weak spot being the afro floating behind him, connected to him like strings as if the afro is controlling him like a puppet. You shoot the afro a couple times, Almeida goes down for good. He explodes into blood, raining down over the desert. That last cult member gets out of the car and stands in the rain, receiving one final message from his messiah.
Clemens, you're in control of things now. Walk down the path of life. Don't succumb to weakness. Take the big risks.
Rest assured, Master Almeida, I will watch over this town. Our way of life stands eternal. May peace rest with our great Almeida, our Messiah.
The day he stopped smiling is the day we remember his smile. Concluding Chapter 2, Cloud Man. This chapter is the one where I think I finally got Killer7. All those complaints I brought up at the beginning of the video just seem to wash away during this level. The gameplay really started to click during this level. I don't know if it's the fact that I was just leveling up all the characters, or enemies just became easier. I can't say. I discovered mechanics that I probably should have known early on, like how you can swap personalities from the pause menu instead of just going to a Harmon's room, which if you don't learn that by the time you reach this level, you're pretty much screwed, because this level is impossible to beat without that. But most importantly, I feel like this is when the story really started to grab me. Before this point, I just kind of felt this story was a weird, jumbled mess. A fun, kooky sequence of events. The only reason I kept playing was to see what weird thing happened next. Almeida's fraud, his cult of personality, his ability just to fake it till you make it, and the front he put on of being able to face anything in his path. But in the end, he was just a poor, lonely man, living out of a trailer, truly scared to meet his end. The whole scene with his death, I don't know, it just kind of struck me as strangely beautiful. I just sat there and thought, wow, this is art. And I don't know, I think there's something kind of beautiful about that. That you play a game 2 decades old, and it can still wow you. Sorry about that little tangent, I guess we'll just get back to the story now. Target 3, Encounter, opens with an introduction of a man in a white suit, enjoying a nice glass of wine, loading a pistol. Just a true American vibe. He's enjoying the pleasures of life, until he takes aim at the woman at the end of the limousine, and opens fire. He enters the building that the limousine is parked outside of. He kills everyone in the building, leaving one woman alive, and her fate is left unknown. Then, we have another breakfast with Garcian, gets another political call, shrugs it off as always. And you guessed it, another scene of Samantha treating Harmon like she works in a typical American nursing home. Garcian communicates with Harmon through the TV. Harmon tells Garcian that a man, Curtis Blackburn, the handsome devil from the previous scene, is making waves, as well as being the person who killed Dan before becoming part of the Smith Syndicate. Then Garcian asks Harmy if he wants Curtis to be taken care of, but gets the response,
"Curtis? No, it's all right. He's just a punk with a gun. Dan's more than he can handle."
Then, Garcian meets up with Mills to get any intel on Blackburn. He learns that Blackburn has been working with the US government, and has also been doing some shady backroom deals, included but not limited to human trafficking and organ harvesting, in order to create the Smiles. Blackburn has specifically been targeting children for this, using an amusement park he owns to abduct children to use for his nefarious purposes. So Smith is dispatched to the amusement park to hunt down Blackburn as well as any evidence they can grab. As you go through the amusement park, you learn that Blackburn is the go-to human trafficker for people in power. A child trafficker catering to the rich and powerful? No one's ever heard of that one before. As you make your way through the amusement park, a couple of the personalities actually get some power-ups. Mask receives a new, mask, making him the true champion, giving him a more powerful charge shot ability, and Dan receives the demon gun from the Archangel. After you make your way through the park, like any other level, you make it to the parking lot. And that's where you meet Blackburn's partner in crime, Ayame Blackburn, his right-hand woman and adopted daughter. A human trafficking ring led by a man with a right-hand lady? Like that ever happened. Right, guys? This was made in 2005, right? Did Suda have inside info? You have a shootout with Anime Ghislaine in the parking lot. The trick is to shoot her while she's in the light. She becomes immaterial in the darkness. I took her out using mask, no problem, but the boss guide I found said to use Dan or Kaide. I don't know, do what's best for you, I guess. After she takes enough damage, she hops on a bus back home, concluding the first half of Target 3. Part 2 opens up with a little business chat between Curtis and a business partner of his, Pedro Montana. Pedro betrayed Curtis, cutting into his share of the business. So Curtis gets a little bit of revenge. He does some not YouTube-friendly things to Pedro's wife and kids, and then puts him out of his misery. Next, we're met with Garcian and Mills, lamenting over some remains they found outside of the Blackburn residence, as the two quietly lament what Blackburn has done to all those children. Now you gun and puzzle your way through the level like any other, but this level ends up being the last time you see Susie Summers as she gives you the last ring. Further into the estate, you have another showdown with Ayame. Just like your last fight with her, shoot her while she's in the light. After killing her, the Hatsune Miku mask falls right off, showing that was the lone survivor from the building that Curtis shot out at the beginning of this chapter. After defeating Ayame, you make it to the underbelly of the estate by draining the pool. You find where Blackburn's been harvesting the organs to create these smiles. And to enter that final room, you need to switch to Dan so he can face the demons from his past. Dan and Curtis engage in one final quick draw duel. To mark the start of the duel is when the pigeon flies off of Blackburn's shoulders. If you take a shot too soon or too late, Blackburn gets a point. Once you beat Blackburn, he drops defeated. Dan finishes Blackburn off by turning the machinery he used for his organ harvesting back on Blackburn. Dan walking out of the room, stopping only to see the bodies of victims lining the wall of Blackburn's lair. Blackburn strung up just like his victims. The Maiden saved the world with their smile. This concludes Target 3 Encounter. Whew. I feel like that one was a bit heavy. Don't worry, the next level isn't nearly as tense. Target 4 Alter Ego sees the return of the anime cutscenes from earlier. You start with the usual, Garcian ignoring phone calls, Samantha smacking around Harmon. Mills and Garcian have a meeting. Mills informs Garcian about the Handsome Men, a group of people dressing up like comic book heroes from a comic book of the same name. Mills believes that the military might have created them to combat the Smiles. The strange thing is, the story of the comic book starts to mirror real life, including the assassination of prominent figures. Something seems off, and Mills gives Garcian the job to take out the writer, Trevor Pearl Harbor. While the identity of whatever party who's bankrolling this job remains a secret, a company by the name of Electroline seems to be buying up comic book IP, and the whole kerfuffle with the Handsome Men seems to be putting a wrench in all of that. Mills ends this chat by showing Garcian the latest issue of the Handsome Men comic. Lo and behold, the Handsome Men taking down Harmon. It seems like the Killer7 are the Handsome Men's next target, so now the Killer7 are hunting them in return. Smith goes down to a small town in the Dominican Republic where Trevor Pearl Harbor is now living. As Dan enters the town, he is met by a street musician, playing a nice little tune.
For your tranquility, deep within, guide to your soul, find your place, then you'll find your way.
And gives Dan a warning about getting lost in the city of smiles. Now you gotta search through the town to make it to the writer's house. I really like a lot of the puzzles in this level. You get to use all the rings in different situations. You have the only case of using Khan's super hearing, where you have to follow the sound of music being played through an alleyway. And if you don't follow the music, you'll be stuck in that alleyway forever. Smith makes their way through the church in the town, and they have a run-in with the Oracle, a small child with the voice of a man grown. Fun fact, the Oracle is a character named Mithra, the antagonist of the Moonlight Syndrome visual novel, a game that Suda wrote and directed many years ago. He gives Smith a cryptic message about the light and darkness, and poof, he's gone forever, never to be seen again. Soon after, you finally make it to Trevor's house, where the truth is finally revealed, that Trevor isn't controlling the Handsome Men. Instead, he has some sort of clairvoyance that allows him to see the future, and he's just been writing propaganda for the Handsome Men. But partway through this discussion, Dan and Trevor are interrupted by Handsome Black. Handsome Black and Dan have a showdown, and Trevor dies in the crossfire, getting shot by one of Handsome Black's lasers, this giving Dan an opening to take down Handsome Black. Then you are met with the rest of the Handsome Men. They challenge the Killer7 to a literal duel on Broadway. So it's an 8v8 match, each one of the personalities of the Killer7 versus one of the Handsome Men. We get introduced to each of the Handsome Men one by one, and Khan even gets a chance to fangirl out.
They're really here! Did you see that? A real handsome pose!
Each member of the Killer7 takes on a corresponding member of the Handsome Men. They all have matching weapons, and it doesn't matter who wins or loses, it's all rigged. Until Garcian has the final standoff with Handsome Pink, but instead of a fight to the death, Handsome Pink transforms, revealing herself to be a woman by the name of Love Wilcox. Wilcox is a master hacker and the head of propaganda for Electroline. Remember the company trying to buy out all that comic book IP? They were trying to buy ZTT Comics the owners of the Handsome Men, but Wilcox was secretly Trevor's biggest fan, so now she takes up a cross to go against the company that hired her in the first place. Wait, doesn't that mean she's the one that killed Trevor? Never mind, let's just move past it. Love says her goodbyes to Garcian and literally teleports out. Unmask your heart, then show us your smile. Thus concluding, Target 4, Alter Ego. Target 5, Smile. The last full chapter of the game. This chapter opens up with Hiro Kasai, the guy who sent you on that mission to kill DePaul, and Kenjiro Matsuoka, that young politician from this scene here. The two stand atop a skyscraper until Kasai accidentally falls to his death, wearing a ball gag and nipple rings on full display. No one ever talked about the motive behind Kasai's death, but my gut tells me it has something to do when he sent the Killer7 after DePaul. Cut to Garcian's trailer. Samantha sits dead, with signs of assault. As Garcian's just chilling in the other room, sipping some tea, and ignoring yet another call about how much your vote matters, Kunlun and Harmon sit in a room, engaged in a heated chess battle. A big brain metaphor for the whole game, I suppose? Kunlun regales a story about a man who had all the opportunities in the world, but was incredibly miserable until the very end. Until, well, I'll just show you the scene. Mills has a meeting with Garcian. Mills gives Garcian the job to hunt down Matsuoka. Matsuoka has been trying to assemble the remnant parties together, amassing a force to win the seat of power in the UN. Garcian makes a comment about Harmon's disappearance to Mills, and Mills starts to open up about Garcian's past and some secrets there within, until...
Okay, 30 years ago, you and Harmon...
Smith checks into the Union Hotel, the last known location of Kenjiro Matsuoka, as well as the scene of Hiro Kasai's death. Here's another fun fact for everyone. The receptionist at the hotel, Edo McAllister, is a character from one of Suda's other games, Flower, Sun and Rain, a DS visual novel. Damn, the Sudaverse is starting to rival the MCU with the number of crossovers and Easter eggs. McAllister asks Garcian if he's checking in, all the usual that a receptionist would do, but Garci blows him off and tries to keep on moving, but something seems off. As you make your way through the hotel filled with smiles, the remnant psyches of Handsome Black, Iwazaru, Travis tell you about 6 murders that took place in this hotel, and that the Killer7 were involved. But we'll circle back to that later. You make it to the 7th floor, and you are met with 2 shadowy figures. They just tell you that your princess is in another castle, and that there'll be an informant waiting to give you what you need. That informant is a woman by the name of Linda Vermillion, the assassin that just capped Mills. She's the one that sends you on your last assignment. She tells Garcian to use your eyes to decipher how the system works, and seek the real enemies. The information she gives leads the Killer7 to Coburn Elementary School. And first thing that happens, Travis hands you a tape recorder and tells you that it's going to be very important. Which it very much is. Throughout the school, you're going to find tapes left by an FBI agent by the name of Holbert. The FBI suspects a strange connection between this school and the US presidential elections. And there's one child that seems to catch not just the eye of Holbert, but the staff of the school themselves. A child by the name of Amir Parkreiner. It said his family was cursed by the devil and possessed the DNA of crime. Whatever that means. Soon you discover that Amir's records don't really match a child that should be going to that school. According to his birth records, he should be about 50 years old. Something seems off, not just with the school, but with this child as well. The government is hiding something big here. With Holbert's investigation, he uncovers the school's link with the Yakumo Party. He discovers that the Yakumo Party is using the education ministry to groom these children for prominent roles in the government. And the Yakumo are using that to indoctrinate the children into overthrowing the US government for Japan. Holbert's final message is how Amir is the Yakumo's trump card, and Amir is the one that takes out Holbert.
Standing right in front of me. Incredible. Amir.
and a lot of the information about Amir is used for the puzzles throughout this level. While running and gunning through the school, you make your way to the office of one Benjamin Keene, the principal of Coburn Elementary, as well as a presidential hopeful. Once you enter his office, Keene challenges Garcian to a game of Russian roulette. If Keene wins, Garcian needs to assassinate the president, but if Garcian wins, Keene will give him the key to hit on women with a 100% success rate. I love how cool, calm, and collected Garcian is in this scene, as Keene is sweating bullets and screaming and yelling about his ideals. Keene ends up losing this game of Russian roulette, and I'll just say, his advice is not as good as he advertised.
And by the way, women are all the same.
Garcian finds a safe that Keene kept in his office in a secret room. You open it to get a key with an odd engraving, which isn't the strange part. Those engraved pieces have been used for puzzles throughout the game. What's strange is, a small cut is left on Garcian's forehead, almost looking like a third eye. You leave through a secret exit in the office, complete a couple more puzzles, and then make your way to the gymnasium. When you enter the gymnasium, you notice a man hanging on the stage on the other end. Once you reach the stage, you are ambushed by Matsuoka, weapon drawn. Matsuoka spills the beans about the education ministry's involvement in manipulating the presidential election, and he's more than willing to kill Garcian to keep that secret. He also clues you in to the man hanging there, the now former education minister, Greg Nightmare. Garcian surprisingly gets philosophical for a second.
Is United States. What is the purpose of the president?
I'm Japanese. How the hell should I know?
Then the camera pans on the faces of the former principals of the school, showing us a familiar mug, the face of Harmon Smith himself. But sadly, we don't get much time to ponder what that means, because our boy Greg just woke up from his vertical nap. Revolver in hand, he takes aim at the Killer7, and you need to take out the chairman. To take him out, you shoot him, and he starts to swing like a pendulum. You shoot him at each high point of the swing until his pants fall off, and he leaves a giant glowing red weak spot. Once he takes enough damage, the lower part of his body bursts into blood. He drops his revolver, and that blood forms some black smiles. You attempt to pick up the revolver, but no luck. You open fire on the black smile, and it doesn't seem to work. And one hit, one kill. The smile will kill whatever personality was there. And one after another, the black smiles will kill the Killer7, until all that's left is Garcian. Garcian grabs the revolver, and bam, it seems to work this time. Now you need to finish off Greg, and he bursts just like any other smile. Garcian returns to the Union Hotel. You find bloodstains scattered across the hotel, each one corresponding with one of the 6 murders mentioned earlier in the chapter. And those 6 were Khan, Mask, Kaede, Coyote, Dan, and I think that first one was supposed to be Kevin. Garcian was the one that took out the other members of the Killer7. Once you reach the 7th floor, you are met by those 2 shady figures once again. The first man identifies himself as Harmon Smith, but a lot younger than the one we are familiar with. He tells you that you are Amir Parkreiner, and at the age of 13, you assassinated the Killer7 in that very hotel. And the truth behind Amir and the Killer7 never made public news, due to national security reasons. Harmon says how impressed he was with Amir's potential, but he always saw the darker side of him. Garcian leaves the room and enters the elevator. He goes up to a black and white corridor, where once again he is met with Kun Lan and Harmon. They really don't get much time to chat. Harmon mentions how it's been a while, and then eventually, you make it up to the roof, and before you stands Amir Parkreiner, third eye opened wide. You take a shot at his third eye. It closes, and Garcian drops to the floor. He puts his gun in his mouth, and Garcian stands disgusted and proclaims that this all can't be him, until he opens up his briefcase and displays all the weapons of all the other personalities. That wonderful smile is gone for eternity. The end? Or is it? We get one final epilogue chapter. Target 6. Lion. 3 years after the event at the school and the Union Hotel, Amir Parkreiner travels to Battleship Island an island halfway between Japan and the US. The island seems nearly deserted, minus the infinitely respawning smiles infesting the island. These smiles remain invisible to the naked eye. You shoot your way through the island until you reach an underground bunker, where Matsuoka sits. He tells you the final smile sits in the room behind him. He tells you that if you kill this smile, it'll be the end of terrorism. But without terrorism, what use is someone like Amir? Matsuoka gives you one final choice. You can either kill Matsuoka right then, and let the US become the undisputed world power, or let him live, and let him rebuild Japan to one day rain nuclear hell on America. It's all your call. Either way, you enter the door behind him, and continue down a passageway until you enter a room that looks exactly like Harmon's rooms you've been entering the whole game, with an old Harmon lying dead on the floor. You continue further, and now you're in rooms that look exactly like Garcian's home, and now you finally get the opportunity to enter the basement. And there you find a man in a pink gimp suit. You shoot the man in the pink gimp suit until he dies. And lo and behold, that man was Kunlun the entire time. Shanghai, 100 years later. Harmon and Kunlun reenact the ending of Target Zero, Angel. Harmon shoots, Kunlun grabs the bullet and flies away. The two are locked in an unending war. The end. For real this time. And once you beat the game, you unlock a new game mode, called Killer7, where all the enemies kill you in one hit, there are no more visible weak spots, and you get a new playable personality, a young Harmon Smith wielding a Tommy gun. And if you beat Killer7, you get another game mode called Hopper7, where all the smiles are replaced with dudes with grasshoppers on their heads. And that's it. That's the plot of Killer7. Wait a minute, there's a book too? Yes, there was a book only released in Japan called Hand in Killer7, which gives details, timelines, and major reports from the game's world. Wait, how does the game's timeline start in 1750? I feel like the book brings up more questions than answers. It really didn't help me understand the story any better after reading it. Either way, I'll leave a link in the description if that helps you out. So, there it is, all of Killer7. Probably one of the weirdest, wildest games I've ever played. The story is nearly incomprehensible, but there are moments and messages that you can see clear as day. My read is Suda clearly doesn't trust the US or Japanese governments. He doesn't feel like our votes matter in these systems. He somehow knew about Epstein back in 2005. Just kidding. Or am I? And there's aspects of the story that just don't make sense, like the God Hand, or Harmon being the God Killer, and all that other stuff. I personally don't think Suda made it for you to figure out. He made something cool, a spy drama, political satire, goofy anime, all at the same time. Either you vibe with its crackhead energy, or you're boring. The gameplay is odd, the story is cuckoo bananas, and I loved every second of it. I find this game is a piece of art that anyone can pull something different out of. So if you made it to this point in the video, and want to ingest this insanity for yourself, do it. It's on Steam, and I highly recommend it. If you made it to the end, thank you so much for sticking with me through this. This is literally the biggest and wildest project I have yet to make. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you made it this far, might as well hit the like, subscribe if you haven't. I hope to cover some of Suda's other games in the future. Let me know what you all think in the comments down below, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Until next time, goodbye.